Um, Thank you. It's a privilege to have you all today. Samir called it the gold rush of the GCCs. And Lalit talked about uncertain times in the GCCs, and the two speakers before us talked about the importance of AI and how things are changing. So I want to start the conversation with 3 important data points, right? These are from different reports. 92% of the companies are saying in the next 3 years they will increase their investment in Gen AI. But the fact is only probably 1% of the organizations out of that have an ability and maturity to deploy AI. That's the first. 70% of the leaders, and we've talked about it in the room when she asked about what is the most important thing, is they said it's important to master a wide range of leadership behaviors to meet the current and future needs. Leadership came up as the top thing even from our audience here. And 70% of the GCC leaders are saying Gen AI is in the top of their mind and it's time for transformation. So with that background, the new playbook of the GCCs is what we are going to talk about, that deals with the new world challenges, that can deal with technology shifts, building transformative competencies, and most importantly, having a bold mindset. What does it call? So our panel questions are going to revolve around that. So let's discover how to build resilient, agile GCCs with that. With that, I think my first question to you, John, is in terms of with the emerging new world challenges. We've talked about a lot of them, technology shifts. How do you see GCCs play out to their strengths? And more importantly, specifically, what are your thoughts and opportunities and strengths from your organization point of view?
And thank you very much. And hopefully you can also hear me at the back. We can't see you, but hopefully you can hear us. Thank you. And first of all, thanks to the organizers for inviting us to come this evening. I think a lot of the questions that we have here have already been answered by our previous 3 phenomenal speakers. So I'm going to take the inspiration from them. But if I think about the way our GCC is evolving, and in Bangalore we've been based 17 years. We started as a shared service center, and now I think a fully fledged global capability center, 17 functions and a lot of global ownership. But we've probably developed, like many companies, in a kind of vertical way. So Novo Nordisk is a 100-year-old company plus, and we have very strong functional verticals. And they become a little bit impenetrable in a headquarter setup. But I think the opportunity for us to take advantage of all the things that are coming along for us, whether that's technology or greater ownership, comes down to 2 things. And actually, so you talked about these. One is agility, and the other one is mindset. And if we as leaders are able to create the agility within our organizations to move across those verticals that have served us so well, in our case for a decade and a half, and if we're able to create the mindset of cross-functionality across those verticals, I think we place ourselves in a beautiful scenario to be able to not only serve the parent organization, but also in many cases lead the parent organization into the future. So 2 words for me answer the question. One is agility, and the other one is mindset.
Anzy, being from a product company, do you also see the similar kind of things? And do you agree cross-functionality and agility is what is the really the strengths of the GCC? How do you see it? Do you see it differently?
No, I also agree with.
I think you need to.
You can hear me, right? I also agree on the same topic. I think Our journey was slightly different in India. So we came to India through acquiring a startup, which was on a cyber risk. And then we slowly built our capabilities to almost a 500-member team. I think the biggest transformation for us hit this year when we actually did the capacity planning. We are also planning the number of licenses for Claude and Copilot, right? How many we need in terms of scaling up our operations. I think that's a bigger transformation that we are seeing in this industry. From a larger perspective, the strengths, definitely the talent is one of the clear demarcator in terms of investing in India. The second is for sure agility. For example, we've been in the industry for the last 20 years in the insurance space. So 20 years means there is a little bit of legacy also plays in terms of the software stack. For us to really rewire, re-architect this solution, it needs deep expertise in insurance domain, right? And also agility. We need to pick up topics which are completely new for us. Especially with the GCC that we have in space, and we have in place in India, we were able to really do that. And we were able to scale faster. We will be able to transform the architecture of the solution to a fully cloud-native stack. That's something that we were able to do. So I completely agree with the point. Agility and talent are two dimensions that I see.
It's interesting to hear that because often I say no two GCCs are alike, right? And John talked about the cross-functionality going, lateral, and you talk about going deep and the tech expertise. So we're dealing with multiple dimensions in all the GCCs. Ravi, I'll come to you on this. Increased focus on value-driven growth, right? We are all talking about innovation mandate, value-driven growth, and also the new age capabilities as Anzy is just talking about. So what do you believe the next wave for the GCCs that will look like for the next decade? And how do you approach, more importantly, scaling the value from your organization perspective?
Yeah, so firstly, thanks to 𝗓𝗖𝗖 for...
I think you'll have to hold it close. No, that's off now.
Is it working now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks to 𝗓𝗖𝗖, and feels fantastic to be here. I think I'll approach the question in slightly in a different way, right? In my view, I think for GCCs to stay relevant over many years now, some of the fundamentals must change, right? Lalitha articulated, very well. Even today, some of or many of the GCCs are built with cost arbitrage as the competitive advantage. The operating model is as well, GCCs are operating as an offshore delivery centers, and leadership being, generally second in line, right? In my view, this is limiting, right? I don't think, GCCs can deliver the value it can with this construct. And I doubt if GCCs will survive as well, over the long run if we continue to be in this construct, right? So the fundamentals must change strategically in operating model, point of view as well, structurally, right? This is precisely what we have done in Ecolab. Internally, we do not call ourselves GCC at all, right? A lot of people do not like me saying this. We see ourselves to be an extension of an office, right? We have 3 floors, 1,400 members here in India. We are seen as an office outside of our head office, right? The experience within office is exactly the same. The structure as well, we are very integrated, right? A lot of leadership roles operate out of,
Global
Ecolab,
roles?
India, yeah, global roles. We drive the global mandate. We stopped reporting out anything that is site-specific, right? Everybody understands we have the ability to hire, so headcount is not a thing that we can take credit. It's only the outcome and impact value. So I guess over the next decade, strategic advantage would not be the cost, but would be more in terms of talent and value. I think GCCs will evolve into more extended offices. You will see a lot more leadership roles driving global mandates, operating out of this location. When you do this shift, fundamental shift, you will see the value play to be very different, right? So the GCCs will deliver more innovation, right? You will see a lot more new age capabilities to be, built out of this place. What is very interesting as well, something that we have done is that GCC, we do not only impact the bottom line. At Ecolab, we have, Ecolab is a chemical manufacturing company, but Ecolab Digital, which is a new division, has become the new growth engine. And the offices in India, predominantly drive the new growth engine, right? So we have been able to deliver an impact to the top line to the tune of $500 million already, right? So GCCs, in my view, will also make an impact to the top line, figure out, the newer avenues. I think this is the future of GCC, in my view.
Yeah. I think you're reiterating what Lalit said in terms of the outcome-based kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And with global leadership also comes the distributed decision-making, as I call it, and that really helps us to propel in the value generation. But John, I want to ask you the same question with a little bit of twist, because what we're talking about is scaling value. And you said earlier that you went from being a shared services center into a capability center. So in that value shift, what have you done differently?
Yeah, there's a number of things actually, and as you were talking, I was thinking a little bit about our journey, and when my previous job before coming to India was a general manager in one of our affiliates. So Novo Nordisk has affiliate presence in more than 80 countries, and many of the things that I received from so-called headquarters, I assumed, stupidly, but I assumed were made in Denmark. In fact, they were not. They were made in India. And it was only coming here that I then realized that there was activities, work, reports, intelligence, insights, materials even, made in India, sort of electronically or cerebrally moved to headquarters and then distributed out to 85 countries. So one of the things that we've shifted quite recently is, in the nicest possible way, cutting out the headquarters. There's clearly a service delivery to headquarters, but there's a direct delivery that we can do for our business units around the world. And one of the things we've done very recently is structured ourselves internally, where we've moved about 600 people out of those headquarter serving verticals that I talked about previously, into one unit with one leader focused on serving the markets. And that allows this cross-functionality to work. It allows insight generation to work. It allows a single-minded focus, which is, for us, commercial execution, impact in the markets, very clear value delivery. And it's the same people, just a slightly different setup, which has allowed us to focus very much on value creation in the markets around the world.
Great. I'll come to you, AJ, because you sit in the headquarters, you wear the hat of a headquarter person responsible for India, but also responsible for your partner's delivery. With that, so how can organizations build a future-fit strategy, especially cultivating those entrepreneurial spirit and embedding innovation into their culture of accelerating the growth and transformation? How do you look at it? Do you think the GCCs here in India are doing that, and how is it perceived in the headquarters?
Yeah, thanks, Lalitha, for the question and for moderating. I think about innovation in GCCs in a world of AI and emerging technologies more broadly, I think along a few dimensions. I think the first is, really that depth is the new breadth. I think, if you are running a GCC, you don't necessarily have to be a hands-on keyboard programmer necessarily, but you have to understand the applicability of AI and emerging technologies in the appropriate functional areas. So if you're in core technology delivery, understanding how the new coding assistants and things like that play a really important role in productivity, understanding the implications of agentic AI in customer contact type environments, and on and on and on. And I think you've got to have that depth, but then channel your teams in the GCC to really exploit the technologies that have the most impact for that particular functional area. The opposite of that would be, a solution looking for a problem. And so you've got to be very directive, if you will, in terms of how you're channeling the innovation. I think that the second dimension I think about is really around learning, upskilling, and bringing teams together. The reality is we're already short of AI talent globally, in India and anywhere in the world. And so we can all either spend the next few years throwing a ton of money at it and still coming up short, or you can produce those individuals and those capabilities from within your own four walls, which means that learning, upskilling, learning pathways become vitally important over the next few years. And it's not just about adopting kind of the enterprise learning platforms, because we all know they exist, but there's a pretty rich diversity of ecosystem players right here that you can tap into, and in many instances evangelize them in the GCC and ultimately export them back for learning and upskilling of your entire talent ecosystem inside the organization. Couple that with things like hackathons. I think we've learned over time that the developer experience is part and parcel of the employee experience in tech. And so how are you bringing those different elements together? How do you bring business and technology teams in the GCC to solve problems in a cross-functional way? I think that becomes another important dimension. I think the third area in innovation, and I'll shift maybe from offense to defense, is really in the area of risk mitigation. I think if you're running a GCC in this new world, it really becomes incumbent on you to understand your organization's threshold for risk. AI, Gen AI, whatever technology you pick, we're in the early innings of this stuff. But there's hallucinations, there's very real world implications when these things go wrong. And so you, I think, have to marry how you're adopting these technologies with your tolerance for risk. There are companies who would say it's perfectly okay if we deploy a bunch of agents out there and maybe customer sat takes a hit for a few hours, for a few days. And there are companies who would say that absolutely doesn't work. And so you have to be a good steward of your enterprise's risk tolerance as you think about these new technologies. And so I think just to sum it up, I think depth is the new breadth. I think training and upskilling becomes vital, but you also have to have a lens of risk mitigation.
Anzy, I'll ask the same question to you with the twist, because he talked about applicability, and he talked about the customer intimacy for the thing. With the deep tech talent that you're talking about, how do you look at innovation and the question from your point of view?
Yeah, I think for us, it was very clear. There are two schools of thought. In my past life, I had a mandate to bring every headcount to India. Okay, so I will seize every opportunity to bring additional headcounts to India, and it was a completely heterogeneous set of functions and portfolios that we had. So in this life, especially what we kind of looked at the context in detail and looked at what could be that incremental value addition for the global that we can bring in, and we were very clear that there is a set of deep expertise that we need around data analytics and AI, and we started building the capabilities. And there is a larger vision in terms of what this center could contribute to. So we started with that journey. On the run, we realized that there are many decision-making functions are not even here, right? I mean, for me, the first step to success was also bringing those end-to-end functions to India, right? If you look at now, the end-to-end product management sits out of India. The decision-making is here. We, as Lalitha mentioned, we own the full mandate in terms of business outcomes out of India. I think that was the first step for us. And then we kind of looked at what are the incremental value additions that we can bring into. We can bring detailed analytics on top of it. We can bring customer dashboards around that. So we kind of incrementally built on top of it, and then we scaled. One of the core beliefs that I have, even with my previous role or the current role, is sometimes as a GCC leader, you need to outgrow yourself.
Absolutely.
So when I first started with my previous organization, the mandate was to scale the organization to a significant level. And we really wanted to, as a tangent to it, we really wanted to build new innovations out of India, and it was slightly tough for me. And especially one incident where we really wanted to build a startup program out of India. Initially, there was a huge resistance from the HQ in terms of what's a value addition. You are just a co-sender. How do you really make sure that IP is co-shared and things around that? And we were able to do that. And it took almost 2 years for me to convince the leadership, and finally we were able to make it. Fast forward, we were able to incubate close to 63 startups. We created close to 18 co-innovations. We generated a pipeline around 5 million for my previous organization. So fast forward, my thinking was that, especially if you're operating a GCC as an operator in India, you have a full stack of options available as a GCC leader, whether you need academia partnership, ecosystem, you need partners, everything is available in India at scale, right? And especially with support of ANSR, 𝗕𝗏 and different platform, they have actually created a rail where you can move significant amount of transactions and volumes. And if I really look at my past life, 10 years back, it was very tough to set up an operation in other part of the geography because you need legal complaints approval, you need 10 different approvals to do that. Now everything is abstracted at a level. From that perspective, we are in much better situation. We have the deep expertise. We have the talent available. Any new tech, you will find the resource here. There is a huge amount of community at play. Here, deep tech communities are available.
That's what this room is, right?
This room is, especially with KSV's role in NASSCOM deep tech, we had a very close collaboration. So it's all sorted out at this point of time.
Super. I hear, end-to-end as a mandate for growing in the value chain, be it product or be it operations, be it services, right? But AJ, I'll come to you for one question in terms of, as a leader, right? How do you inspire and empower teams from afar, especially in terms of, fostering accountability, consistently driving that high-performance culture? What do you do?
Yes, I think about, GCC leadership, and I think it's akin to a Swiss Army knife, right? On the one hand, there's an operation to run, and you've got to be really knowledgeable about, the talent acquisition, branding in a very crowded marketplace. How do you attract and retain talent? How do you engage employees? Understand the regulatory environment, SEZ, transfer pricing, but you do all that behind the scenes, and you kind of have to hide a lot of that stuff, if you will, from your stakeholders. But you do it, I think, in service of what is the greatest asset of the GCC, which is really its people and the capabilities they represent. And so when it comes to leadership, I think the first thing that I think about is vision and alignment. I might sit in Atlanta, but I think all of us share this notion that, a GCC is really an extension of a company's business, right? The Delta Tech Hub is a co-equal partner in solving Delta's problems, in enabling Delta's strategic objectives. But with that, then comes what you do and what you not do. So while we may have certain objectives for the site in terms of governance, in terms of operations, we expect that the business objectives for each team, tech and non-tech and business, are set globally. And we expect that our GCC leaders have an equal say in defining that, but we're not going to go do that in a vacuum, because the moment you do, you start to draw a line between us and them. So I think that's the first thing that you've got to do, and it's very tempting sometimes to kind of try and set your own agenda within the walls of your organization, but you have to, I think, resist that temptation. The second thing is really, I think, getting the mid-management layer right. If you think about individual contributors, the bulk of our folks are Gen Z, younger millennials, people anywhere from 3 to 8 years of experience. And the role of a team leader, a frontline leader, becomes vitally important, not just for delivery and outcome, but in areas like mentoring and coaching. And so we spend a lot of time interviewing potential leaders to understand how they might fit in our environment. And then once we bring them in, we actually have to equip them with the tools and techniques to lead in a way that we expect them to. So as an example, we've taken Delta values, and then for the GCC, we've broken that down into key success behaviors and defined what it means to exhibit those behaviors at every grade. So if we believe that servant leadership is important, then we have defined what it means to demonstrate servant leadership from an early career individual all the way up to the site leader. And what we do then is think about ways to highlight those behaviors. The third element, I think, is really around rewards and recognition. And so while the Delta Tech Hub really is part of the overall enterprise rewards and recognition programs, we also have programs here in Bangalore that reward the right behaviors. We believe, for instance, it's important for more senior folks to mentor more junior folks. And so we spend a lot of time rewarding folks who go over and above in those areas. And so that's, I think, kind of the three areas that I think about when it comes to kind of building resilient leadership within the walls of a GCC.
So what I hear you say is shared vision, and the leadership framework is pretty essential. The last question for 1 minute answer to you, Ravi, is in terms of, we're talking about a very volatile environment, taxes, tariffs. With all of that impact, how do you think GCC leaders can effectively amalgamate and navigate through this complexity?
Yeah, so that's a
1 minute answer because we're running out of time.
that's a difficult and quite controversial question.
I know.
Yeah. So if you really look at the external variables, right? So almost all of them are beyond our control, right? So I think first and foremost thing that we should do as leaders is to acknowledge that this is the new normal, and there is little that I can influence to change anything, right? Rather than getting overly anxious thinking about what could happen, I think we should start focusing on what really matters, right? We can do few things, right? One is not all of the things that are happening may impact us, right? Making sense of things, filtering noise with signal, I think that's a right thing to focus on. As leaders, we should do that. We should figure out what makes sense to us. We should bring clarity to our teams, right? That's one. Second is, what we can do is, create adaptive and resilient, teams, resilient, organization. That's, something that we can do, right? Third, amidst all of this turbulence, turmoil, we can seek opportunities, right? Can there be an opportunity where I can, change value play? Can I contribute, right? Fourth, I think, if every other variable which is external is against you, reflect back on your purpose, right? What's company's purpose, right? Purpose guides through uncertainties. It's the compass, right? So if you ask me, Ecolab, our purpose is to protect what's vital, right? Protecting people health, planet health, and business health, right? Whenever we have been hit with any of these uncertainties, we have, gone back, reflected upon, and done these things. We have identified opportunities, right? When there was COVID, our focus was on how do we help pharmaceutical companies come up with vaccines first, because our core business is in water management, right? The tax, right? With technology, can we optimize supply chain, right? With the AI, boom coming, again, water being the core business, data centers, chip, manufacturing needing a lot of water to cool, can we have a new business play there? I think, this is how we should approach, not to get overly anxious, but focus on what we can do.
Yeah. I think what a fantastic summarization for complex things. So we've talked about agility, talent, applicability, end-to-end focus, focusing on what matters, and the mindset, and shared vision. With that, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the